Welcome back to News in Focus. Now, Israel's human rights group B'Tselem has declared Israel's actions in Gaza as genocide in its latest report titled Our Genocide. The report, which was released on Monday, carries strong condemnation of Israel's genocide in Gaza, which has killed over 60,000 Palestinians and wounded close to 145,000. Joining me now, I'd like to welcome Sarit Michaeli, who is the International Outreach Director for B'Tselem in Tel Aviv. Sarit, thank you so much for joining us here on News in Focus on Hilaal TV.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I think, Sarit, the question I think that everyone's mind is, why has it taken so long for a report like this to be released?
So it's taken us a long time because we've worked on this very hard. It's taken us time to both reach the understanding of what we at B'Tselem would like to do as an Israel-based organization that includes both Israeli and Palestinian staffers. Like, what is our specific contribution to this debate? How can we expand the knowledge, the understanding of what is going on? And then also just the preparation, the research for this report is not something we've taken lightly. And yeah, absolutely. I think it's very clear that Palestinian human rights organizations, other human rights experts, certainly the UN Special Rapporteur, for example, have been discussing Israel's actions in Gaza and calling them a genocide long before B'Tselem or Physicians for Human Rights, our fellow organization that has done it inside Israel. But we also have a different position. We're working from within our own society, and from our perspective, when we realized that what we are looking at on the ground, what is happening on the ground, is genocide, then it became very clear that we also have an obligation to act, that we are doing something that morally, as well as factually, represents an imperative. And in fact, actually, we were planning to release this report later in the year, but we decided to expedite the release because, of the absolute horror of what is going on the ground right now in Gaza.
Sarit, it's very unprecedented for an Israeli group within the country itself to use the word genocide. If you listen to, of course, many Israeli politicians or analysts, that very same G word is become taboo. What did it take for the organization to really sit back, taking all of these testimonies and really reaching the conclusion that indeed genocide, according to the Geneva Convention, is occurring in Gaza, and now what we're seeing, of course, in the occupied West Bank?
So I would say this. First of all, B'Tselem is not a legal organization. Like the report we issued isn't a legal document in the sense that we're aiming to show that the crime of genocide, according to what has been basically debated by the International Court of Justice, is being committed. We make it very clear. There is a debate on this. There are legal documents. This is not our realm. We're an Israeli human rights group that is trying to look at genocide both as a political phenomenon, a regime phenomenon, a historical phenomenon, and trying to analyze also the root causes within our own society of what we're seeing now in Gaza. And I think this is our addition to this conversation. Essentially, what are we saying? Like, what we are adding? I would say several things. The first is we're looking at the root causes of what enabled genocide, but was not a deterministic history. The history of apartheid, Israeli apartheid, of dehumanization and separation, and also lack of any sort of consequences of impunity of Israeli violators. And then the additional thing we also talked about is the trigger that led the Israeli regime to change its policies between just a policy of domination, of control of Jewish supremacy, to a genocidal policy. And we look, in this context, we look at the Hamas-led attack of October 7th, in which Palestinians from Gaza perpetrated the most horrendous war crimes and crimes against humanity against Israeli civilians, killed people, injured people, took hostages, some of whom are still kept in Gaza. And we understand this attack both, of course, as just a crime and as something that we are condemning so wholeheartedly, but also as a trigger that led Israelis like ourselves, who were so traumatized by this, to basically turn a blind eye to what is going on now in Gaza. It's also, again, like one of the contributions that B'Tselem is making is looking at the government that we have now in Israel, one of the most fanatical governments in our history. And this government has also utilized, cynically manipulated the trauma that Israelis experienced on October 7th in order to push forward policies of domination, of genocide that they have been promoting even before October 7th. Now, none of this justifies Israel's actions. Acknowledging that Israelis went through this terrible trauma on October 7th doesn't absolve Israel of responsibility, doesn't absolve Israelis of responsibility. It's an explanation of the historical context in which the actions unfolding for the past almost 2 years have taken place, have played out. So this is, I think, an important contribution that we're making to an understanding of this reality. And then the final contribution I think that B'Tselem is making in our report is that we're also looking at, we're not saying that the genocide is happening in the West Bank, but what we are saying is that the genocide that the Israeli regime that has become genocidal is operating also in the West Bank with impunity, and that the risk of a similar trigger playing out in the West Bank and leading to similar results vis-a-vis Palestinians is a real risk, that the fact that the Israeli regime is operating with impunity is exposing Palestinians living under Israel's control in other places to danger. And this is borne out by the fact, for example, that Israel has adopted in the West Bank, has been implementing similar tactics and types of weapons and types of attacks that it has been employing in Gaza. Now, I'm not saying it's the same level. Obviously, it's at a low level, but things like aerial bombardments, attacking people in refugee camps, demanding and evacuating or forcibly transferring tens of thousands of Palestinians from refugee camps in the northern West Bank, and also the number of Palestinian fatalities who were killed in
Sarit, I have to stop you there. Sorry, because
the West Bank.
I just need to get this question in. You mentioned in the statement, of course, you've taken statements from senior Israeli politicians, military commanders, and of course, Palestinians as a whole. I think they're just two, and I know it's not directly in this very same report, but when, of course, you listen to Itamar Ben-Gvir, when you listen to Bezalel Smotrich, two of the hardline right-wingers within the Israeli government. And of course, when Benjamin Netanyahu mentioned, along with Yoav Gallant, that their aim was to, quote unquote, eliminate the Amalek, who, of course, are, in their eyes, are the Palestinians. And when, of course, you see images of Palestinian mothers, fathers, of course, having to bury their children, images of children itself, I would like to think that also contributed a lot to this report, didn't it?
Look, in the report, we actually provide statements given by Israeli leaders right after October the 7th and in the last couple of years. And these statements, Israel is asking us, Israel is basically denying, of course, that it's perpetrating this crime. But it's asking us to basically say, to accept, to believe that what Israeli policymakers said, and then what the army went ahead and did, has no connection. These two things are not connected. And what we are saying is that these two things are connected, that Israeli leaders declared what we are planning to do. The Israeli army then went ahead and did it. The results, the consequences of the shocking horror of tens of thousands of Palestinians killed, of them, over 17,000 children. Just one example. 2 million people now being starved deliberately by Israeli government policies. These consequences were clear in the month after the beginning of the war, in the second month, 6 months into it, a year into it. So Israel cannot now say that it was not aware that these consequences amount to what we would describe as the total dismantling, the total elimination of any possibility of life in Gaza, right? That's what we're seeing on the ground right now. We're seeing Israel taking deliberate and coordinated action to dismantle, destroy Palestinian society in Gaza, which in our book is a textbook case of genocide. And this is our call to the international community and to Israelis. People need to do everything they can within the realms of international law in order to stop this, to end this right now.
Sarit, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us here on News in Focus on Hilaal TV.
Thank you very much.
That's Sarit Michaeli, who is the International Outreach Director for Bat Salam. After the break, you've been seeing tsunami warnings across nations that are within the Pacific Ocean. It's not a new phenomenon. This has been happening for decades, even centuries. So what is now leading this current wave of tsunami warnings after that 8.8 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Russia in the early hours of yesterday? I'm going to be speaking to the University of Stellenbosch's Professor Guy Midgley with regards to that. Do stay tuned.